welcome back to another episode of the Strong Family Project podcast. Today we'll be talking about what we've been reading lately and some situational parenting practice.
Welcome back to the Strong Family Project podcast, where we guide you on the path to raising confident, independent, and resilient children in a strong family environment.
To start off, I have to do something I hate doing, which is admit that I don't feel great. I'm suffering from low E right now, low energy. The whole household has been sick. However, one of my pet peeves is talking about sickness. So acknowledging it in case we sound funny,
Right.
but we're going to power through it anyways.
Yeah, I feel like with a family of 5, we just keep passing things around to each other. And I think that
Well, your youngest one, that was a great idea to come in for a hug, inches from my face, and sneeze, like in my open mouth, up my nose. I felt like water hit my face as he sneezed right in my, like, inches away. I've never been blasted with that many germs at the same time at such a close proximity. It was a new experience.
And one I'm sure you never want to have again. That's gross.
Yep. It's oddly, since that day, the old immune system is not up to par. And I tried to teach it a lesson yesterday. I figured, all right, well, I'm not feeling well, so I should probably train harder.
Of course.
To do that, go down in a 2-hour leg day. That hurt me. Then I thought, not enough.
So cool.
Ran a 5K, which was a good start, and then climbed the mountain. And then oddly, I don't feel great today.
What are you going to take from that?
It didn't go hard enough.
Yeah, that's the thing she would say.
I don't take my advice around illness. It's not my area of expertise. This is kind of tip that, like, I just acknowledge what's going on. Okay, I don't feel great. It is what it is. You just kind of have to move on with your day. You have kids, you have obligations. I have jobs, plural, to get to. So it's just an acknowledgement and a moving on.
Right. It's been about, I'd say 2 weeks. This has been like on and off for somebody in the family. And my patience is starting to wear thin. And that's unusual for me, but I'm trying to, like, again, just acknowledge it is what it is and try to focus my energy on the times that they need me the most. Like last night, Everett had a coughing fit. That's not something that I had planned or expected to have happen, but that was like 20 minutes of just, oh my gosh, this is going to be a terrible night, blah, blah, blah. But I'm sure families out there all understand that experience of, like, when someone is sick, it just shifts the energy in the house. It's just a different experience. And at this point, I just want it to be over.
Well, so here we go.
Okay.
What have you been reading lately, Mel?
I just finished a couple weeks ago The Boys in the Boat, which is based on a true story of, I believe it was the 1936 Olympics in Berlin. And just to give you a little background, when I was younger, I did not enjoy reading at all. And except for Roald Dahl books, I give my mom credit. She opened my eyes to Friendly Giant. And when I first looked at it, I was like, no way I'm reading that, because it was like over 200 pages. Because that was like back then, that's what I would do. If it was like less than 200 pages, I'd be like, okay, I'll give it a try. Anyway, fast forward, that was a great book. Forward to now, I've really had a hard time reading the last 15 years because I've had young kids in the home. But this last year, the boys went and saw the preview for the Boys in the Boat movie, and I got excited. And I really loved the book for 2 reasons. One is that it was just a fantastic story. Someone could have made this story up. There were so many twists and turns. But also, the author so beautifully weaved in accurate history. And honestly, when I was growing up, I really didn't. Obviously I took history classes, but I didn't really see it impacting my life or what relevance it had. And maybe it's just page, for lack of better reason, that I find it fascinating now.
Any lessons you pulled out for parenting or for the kids? I know you did. It was sure one.
One lesson?
Yeah.
Just persistence. Because these people had to go through such struggles. Like, they didn't have the kind of technology or ease of life that we can have these days. And somehow I feel like the difficulty they had to endure was somehow a blessing, because it made them stronger, tougher, more resilient individuals, which is what this podcast is all about. At the beginning, we always say confident, resilient, independent. And that book truly defines how you can, the mindset of getting there. The main, I don't want to say character, person, because these were real people, he had to endure such crazy things as a child. His mother dying. I don't want to give it away, because if someone wants to read it, fabulous. things he had to endure and at young ages and how he overcame them and still managed to do wonderful things with his life. That is inspiring to me as a parent. If anything, you can think back and say, man, at least we don't have to deal with X, Y, and Z of the 30s or the 20s or the 10s. I think people say 1910s.
Teens.
Just because then there was so much little resources that we have now, but somehow they just lived life to the fullest.
I appreciate you sharing that, Mel. I've been reading lately Daily Stoic, which I think is one of the best books, just a daily tip about life. I know Mel reads it too. And then we have the Daily Reader that I wrote for our family and that friend Vince wrote for his family. We read those each night at dinner. And those tips always seem right on point. It's just teaching our kids lessons on how we think about life to kind of nudge them forward.
And then I think I mentioned this in the previous podcast, but Everett, so the kids each had one of those books from you. And Everett's was in his bedroom. And about 2 weeks ago, he asked me if we could start rereading it at night when I read to him individually.
And in case you're new to the podcast, I'm going to explain what we're talking about. A couple years ago, I spent every day, I'd write down 1 or 2 titles of tips that I wanted to teach the kids. How we think about money, how we think about family life, how do we deal with interactions, what's the difference between being virtuous and virtuous signaling. And then at the end of the year, I wrote a paragraph on each, had it published and gave it to them as a Christmas gift. So they have 365 plus days of just tips and advice about life. I highly recommend doing it. It's one of the most valuable things I've ever done. And I spent last year teaching people how to do it. 1 person completed it. So it's really, I'm just going to put it on your plate. I think there's a couple other people who have messaged me, said they're on it and they're going to finish it in year 2, which is great. Sometimes it's not the right time for that, but that's what we're talking about when we talk about the family book. And it's a legacy project that I highly recommend. But there's a whole podcast on it in season 1.
And it's one of those books that's going to keep giving. So when I read it we read it at dinner time, it might be relevant in one way. Or if I read it to Everett at bedtime, sometimes the language is like over his head, but we're still planting seeds and I can explain it in a way that makes sense to him. And the fact that he even wants to, I know he's trying to feel this connection with you and learn from you. And I love that he's 6 and like starting early.
Before we get to the tactical parent situation Q&A, Mel wanted to bring up a quote that she came across this week and share some thoughts on it.
Yes, I'll give a little background. I like listening to the 3 of 7 project, and Chad Wright just has a lot of wisdom, just given the kind of life he's led. And he was talking about how he had gone to a funeral, and it wasn't even somebody he knew. It was like a friend of a friend. And he noticed that everyone who spoke about the person who died at the funeral only talked about the good things that person did for others. They never mentioned how much money they had, what kind of house they lived in, what kind of vacations they took. Like, it was nothing materialistic that was mentioned. And I imagine that's fairly common, probably, but he was so struck by it. And then his brother, Blake, shared this quote on the podcast. You can't enjoy the things money can buy if you ignore the things that money can't buy. And interestingly, we asked our kids to talk about what they thought that meant. So they wrote it in their journal. We haven't actually discussed it yet. And one of my kids thought it meant just work hard. But I want to discuss it because I think they're missing the point. What this really means is, what are you focusing on in your life? Are you focusing on the things that money can buy? The big house, the nice car, the big fancy vacations, even if they're not fancy? Or are you spending time on the things that money can't buy? Time with your family. That's very precious and valuable. Relationships. I think sometimes we go through our day and we focus so much on working and providing and making money or taking care of the things we own that we tend to ignore, maybe not fully ignore, but partially ignore the things that money can't buy, which is really what the podcast is all about. Having a strong family. You can't buy that. You have to put the energy and effort in to make that happen. So I thought that was a very worthwhile quote.
A lot of themes converge on that quote. There is, from the great philosophical movie Fight Club, they talk about, and I'm not going to get the quote exactly right, but they say, we spend too much time buying the things that we don't need to impress the people we don't like. And that is very true because it is so superficial. It is the easiest first step. It is harder to go past step 1. I'm going to buy some stuff and I'll get a reaction. Like, it's very superficial. And we learn a lot of that in school. Like if I show up with this thing, I get a reaction from my peers. And it takes some intentional teaching to yourself and your kids on what is really important. And it really comes down to, for me, role modeling. If you stop and are one of those people, I hate to say it, I'm going to say it anyways. If you're one of those people who are like always carrying a Stanley Cup, a Starbucks, like the fanciest thing, and like you carry it around like it's an ornament on top of your outfit so that you get, and I know people don't do it intentionally. It's not like a negative thing, but just be aware of it, because then your kids see that and they want to carry around things as well. Oh, why don't I carry around these dorky Pit Viper glasses?
I was just thinking
Oh
about
my
that.
goodness. Kids these days. But it's so superficial because anything else takes a little bit more time than exchanging money for a thing and getting a reaction. For example, Mel said developing a strong family with a strong family guide. Well, it takes practice. The Strong Family Path is available for free at strongfamilyproject.com. You can download it and start it, but it's not going to be a miracle cure, wave the wand, and tomorrow everything is perfect. And with those superficial items, you get an immediate reaction. So you have to give up what you want in the short term for what you really want in the long term.
And a theme that comes out in our podcast quite often is we're raising adults. I know we want to think of our kids as always going to be kids. I certainly struggle with that. It's hard for me to realize I have a teenager going into high school next year, and he could potentially be out in the workforce in 4 years. That blows my mind. However, it's important to recognize that we're raising people who are going to go out, and we want them to be independent, resilient, and confident. That's really our goal. And by just giving into every whim or every trend or indulging in all of those more materialistic money can buy, quote unquote, kind of things, I really think we're setting them up, the kids up, to just expect and want that when they grow up.
And I'll make one more point on it, because this is so critical as society becomes less healthy, less skilled. And these aren't just my opinions. You can look at the obesity rates. You can look at the skill sets that people have. These are studies and research. It is easier to stand out if you're willing to do the work, because the bar is so damn low. And I mean that in a sad way. The bar is so damn low. We walk into a teacher's meeting and everyone there, I mean, they have a tough time walking to their seats. They look sickly. They're carrying all their drinks. Like, how am I supposed to have an intelligent conversation how to move the school forward with you if you can't get from the door to a chair? And that isn't a rare situation, unfortunately. And so the reason why I highlight that is because you have a great opportunity to teach your kids and yourself the skills that it takes to stand out, and you become much more confident. And yeah, the bar is low, but you should set it even higher for yourself. Walk into a room, put together, confident. Like, you don't have to be an exercise weirdo like me, but relatively in shape and have some contribution and value versus, I think, we should give kids free this or free that so that everyone feels good. Okay, for example, I wanted to advocate for, they were doing this free lunch program. Say, hey, how about we do provide free lunch for the kids who need it, but why don't we take this huge lot of money and hire a teacher? So we're providing a job that can then teach the kids the skill of prepping the lunches so that they have it. And they can have a morning class, food provided, teacher provided, create it for the kids that want, versus just like throwing out a wide canvas of like D- food. You can get some A+ food for the kids who need it, and a skill and an experience, but no one wants to hear that because it's harder.
It is harder. To bring it back to the book. So you talked about how the most important thing truly is being a good role model. So in the home, that's super important. But another way to back that up is by reading your kids books of people who are good role models. So I've been reading to the kids at night forever. And I've transitioned recently with my older two to reading books that are more autobiographical. So we're reading one about Jace Robertson, who's part of the Duck Dynasty. He's one of the sons. And so if they're reading, I choose books to read to them about people who I want them to emulate. So that one has been great. The next one I'm going to read to them is actually Boys in the Boat. And it is a little higher level, but I think it's worth it. And I'm currently reading The Rise of Theodore Roosevelt, that's already fascinating. How much he did and the way he taught himself things just in the first 18 years of his life is fascinating. And I want my kids to, I'm going to talk to them about it. I don't know if I'm going to read it to them yet. It's a very long book. But I think the point is I'm learning about him, who was a fabulous role model, that I can then take ideas from that and use it with my kids. So if we ourselves are not finding ourselves to be great role models, or we need to make some changes in our life, sometimes reading about people that have done awesome things can inspire you.
Yeah, I like and appreciate that, Mel. Great job with the reading and teaching them these bigger picture, teaching them to read books and these more in-depth things than Instagram comments. I've never felt dumber than, oh shoot, I can't believe I scrolled through these comments. Like every once in a while, there's a couple funny ones where I'm like, that's pretty witty. I enjoy some good wit. Man, like you want to see what people really think. One time, don't do it more than once because it'll make you sick to your stomach. Scroll through a parenting Instagram comment. Someone will be like, hey, like here's something I do with my kids. And people are like, you're lucky you have a house. You're lucky you have a road. Like, it must be nice weather there. I can't believe you posted this. I feel bad for me. I got divorced. Okay. I'm just trying to give an example of something. It's wild what happens in these comments, and focus on higher level learning than getting bogged down in there because it's so tasty. Oh my goodness. It happened to me and I felt bad for the rest of the day.
And also, if we just base things on our feelings, you're not going to get very far. So we mentioned earlier, we've been under the weather. And usually when I put the kids to bed, I come upstairs. I haven't even been watching TV. I just go right to my book. The last week I've been slacking on that because I haven't been feeling well, which has been basically my excuse. So last night I almost watched a show, but I was like, you know what? I feel better today. I'm going to go back to reading, and I'm so glad that I did, because it's easy to back away from good habits. Oh no, I still don't quite feel good. You almost trick yourself into just doing the wrong thing. So I'm back, and it just took that one night of making that decision, even though I felt like difficult, and reading for 20 minutes. And now I'm like, I can't wait tonight to get back to the reading.
Yeah, and I found out you snuck attacked me last night trying to take care of me. I obviously beat myself down yesterday, and it took me a long time to fall asleep. I was hurting, my head hurt, my eyes. And all of a sudden I feel like something really cold and wet in my arm. Turns out Mel's like hitting me with some holy water to get the demons out. I woke up all bewildered. What is going on here? Like, I didn't even know because I was so out of it. I just grabbed my pillow and scurried out of the room. I didn't even know what was going on. Turns out Mel's trying to exorcise demons when I'm sleeping.
Your mom gave me this little bottle of like holy olive oil, like forever
Figures
ago.
it was her.
It was like when one of the kids was a baby and they were sick, and she's just tried this. And I happened to come across it in the cabinet yesterday. And last night, like with Everett having his cough attack and someone else hacking and sneezing, I was like, you know what? Why not just
Like,
holy
oh
oil?
no, why not? I woke up ready to go. I thought the house was being robbed, so confused, out of it.
I know, and then you left, and I was like, oh no, I feel really bad, but
no idea.
I don't regret it.
I had to figure out what happened in the morning. Like, why did I get attacked last night?
Touched your forehead.
No.
And then you're like, what? And then I'm like, no, it's okay. It's
It was
nothing.
not okay. I was ready to go. Woke up out of a stone cold sleep, sweating. Oh, goodness. All right.
So
Hey, good intentions. So I
Yeah.
appreciate the kind intentions. Let's get to some situational parenting. Oh, one other note. If you're looking for areas to role model, we have 2 full episodes in season 1 called Areas You Absolutely Need to Role Model for Your Kids. It's a 2-parter, and we'll tell you these, I think it's 13 areas that we're talking about that are outside. It actually includes the financial realm. You do need to role model financial acumen for your kids, but there's the other ones that we're talking about, these skills to learn. And to finish this off with a little story, man, it is noticeable when people don't have the skills. I told the school story, but I was on a call, and maybe I shared this in the last podcast. I was on a call for work, and I came out, and Mel's out in the road shoveling because a FedEx driver got his truck stuck, this 20-something. Nice guy, completely skillless, had no idea, drove his truck right into a snowbank, and then just continued to floor it till it dug almost down to the frame in the dirt. And so Mel came out to help him because Mel's nice. And I came out to help to try to tow him out using my truck. The road's all ice. And he just had no idea what to do. Like, you're a professional driver. You get paid to drive. However, your company or your family didn't teach you the skills of how to do it. I'm like, all right, I'll hook it up. And he was so well-meaning. He's, all right, I'll get in. What do I do? Press the gas slowly. And then he's just like, floor it. and Mel was trying to shovel, and he didn't even offer to take the shovel. If you see a lady shoveling, you out of the problem you caused, he's probably, oh no, I got it, grab the shovel. He just walked up and down the road because I gave it a half-hearted try to get him out. I tried to tow him out of my truck. It just wasn't going to work because he buried himself, and so he had to call the office, and someone else from the office who had more skills came out and shoveled him out. But it was blocking the entire road, so Mel couldn't get to where she needed to go for the kid. This person, meaning 20-something, had no idea how to drive, had no idea the social construct around. If someone comes out to help you, help yourself too. And it was just complete lack of skills. And yeah, like people are like, oh, be great. He's grateful he's working. I'm like, work better. You don't get to do things like, even for his sake, I bet he wanted to be more skilled. He wasn't like a bad person, like I'm mentioning. He looked almost embarrassed that he had no idea how to handle the situation as a 20-something-year-old guy.
And again, he was a really nice guy. I almost didn't want to like him because I'm like, what the heck? But when I came up there with the shovel, I truly expected him to be like, okay, great, let me start shoveling it out. I intended to shovel, but I expected him to offer. That's probably a whole other podcast topic. That was like a disappointment. But yeah, the lack of skill was sad and disappointing.
And if he was willing to help himself more by shoveling, I would have worked harder and got him out. Yeah, I did have another call to get on. I could have extended the rope, get my truck down the slope instead of trying to back up a hill. Like, gave it a 75% effort probably. But I would have definitely, if he was out there busting his butt trying to learn and do something, we would have gone above and beyond. All right, here's the situational parenting. So we're going to give you some common parenting situations. Mel and I may have some differing opinions on it, but it's just some underlying things you can consider when these situations happen to you. In my career, when I was running fitness facilities, we would have popsicle sticks that would have common member questions on them because we needed to practice them. Pull a popsicle stick out. How are you different than CrossFit? And the trainer would have to answer it because we're looking for certain themes. Okay, we're not going to put anyone else down. Just say, hey, they do work out of the day model and we do personal training. Then you turn it back to what we do. Or, hey, my knee hurts. Can I work out with you? Yeah, absolutely. Here's what we can do to evaluate what's going on. We also have this PT relationship if you need to go and get it checked out before you start training. So we practice all these situations so that the response is the same regardless. And in family life, it's the whole, oh, ask mom, ask dad. If you are not on the same page in common situations, it's going to create some turmoil in the household and usually unintended. It's not like you're doing something bad. You just don't know. And kids are smart. They're going to get around it. All right. So let's give you a situation, Mel. Let's say you're having a birthday party for one of your children or two of them on the same weekend, which was ridiculous that I had to hang out that long. Let's just say hypothetically that happened last weekend. And a kid steps out of line. Not your kid, different kid, and it's a safety issue. How would you address it? Do you feel comfortable addressing it? Do you hold the standards in your household, or are you more lenient because they're not your kids?
Well, I think the first question I asked myself, is it a safety issue? So if it's just like a personality thing, then maybe I would give it some time to play out because I know kids need to figure those things out. But if it's a safety issue, and in this case, hypothetically, it involved some BB guns, some airsoft gun, then I think you have to step in and hold the standard. Now, what comes to mind for me is our individual situation where I help at the school every week, so I know all these kids, so I already have some rapport with them. So if they're at my house, I think I have more of a place to be able to say something because of that rapport. But I understand not everybody has that. So regardless of that, I still think you need to step in, if it's a safety issue especially, and say something for sure.
I do think you set the standard and hold the standard within your house. There are ways to do it that are smoother than others. For example, typically you'd want to address them in private, don't embarrass them in front of their friends. However, sometimes I guess it happens, but typically you want to address it in private. You want to try to build a rapport like, hey, here's why we can't shoot BB guns when people are walking in front. If you're dumb in small things, you're going to be dumb in big things. No, I didn't say that, but it's a safety issue. And this is the standard. And if you can't hold the standard, then you're going to get the boot right in the rear end to parents to pick you up. And you don't say it in a mean way. You don't scold them. You don't embarrass them. But it actually, in my opinion, I think helps kids who have a lot less structure to see something slightly different. And it's not done in a mean way. Hey, I acted out. I said something I shouldn't have. I cussed. I wasn't listening to the rules, I was rude to someone and I got corrected, like their eyes get big, like it's never happened to them. It's like, hey, it's cool. I just want to address that this is off and we don't accept that here.
This brings up a kind of a bigger issue that I think is really interesting is when kids go to other people's homes, they are going to experience different kind of family lifestyles, which I think can be really interesting. When I was growing up, I honestly didn't spend a lot of time at other people's houses. And it wasn't until college when I was visiting someone that I realized, oh my gosh, people like live differently than we do. I was very naive. But I think that it like hit me like a ton of bricks in the way that other people can live in different lifestyles and it still works. So it doesn't have to be like things are not going to be exactly the way it was in your home. Now, I think this is an awesome opportunity. So if you've got like a strong family going and you have kids over, you can impact them. That's not necessarily like your overarching role, but they can leave your home and be like, hey, something cool happens there. Or they share gratitude at dinner time. Maybe I could start that in my own family because we do that when one kid is over and stays for dinner. So I think there's a really cool opportunity to set a standard in just how you live your family life, not necessarily just about rules about one thing. So I think that is a cool opportunity whenever kids are over. But I do think you have to call them out. I think, like, going forward to the next time we hypothetically have a party, we might have to set that standard a little better. We put our oldest in charge of it, which helped. But then at some point, the parents also have to step in, potentially.
Next situation, you get a call from the school and they say your child's been in a kerfuffle. It's been in a disagreement with other kids. How are you going to approach that?
Am I going for?
Oh, you want me to? I do think it's a balancing act. First of all, you need to have rapport with your kids if they're going to tell you the truth. And I take everything I gather information first. There's a saying, I think it was from the Andy Stanley podcast, ask at least 3 questions before you make a statement. So you don't get all defensive. Maybe your kid did act out. Like it happens. Like it's happened with our kids. And they need to be corrected and taught why that isn't correct behavior. Sometimes the school only sees part of the story and you have to sit them down and have like real talk. If I go to bat for you with the school, I need to know 100% that you're not pulling my leg, you're not embellishing and nothing else. Because there's nothing else that will happen wrong other than you get a consequence for what happened. But if you lie on top of that, there's going to be more issues. I think it happened once with our older son. I don't remember the situation, like his laptop ran out of battery and the teacher just saw the end of it. You're not allowed to have a laptop without battery in school or something. And it was the end of the day. He had already handed in his project. And it wasn't the teacher. It was like a teacher's aide wrote him up for it. Mm-hmm. And so I gathered all the info and I just reached out to the teacher. Hey, this thing happened. Did he complete all the work? And is this something that you want to be writing up for so that I can back you up if this is the case? I said, oh no, it was a misunderstanding. And so I didn't hammer Logan when he came home. I need to gather information and then we'll deal with it. And even if the information isn't what you want to hear, it gives the kids some time to think about it too, because maybe they'll try to lie to you or get more creative, but sometimes they just need to be emotionally separated from the situation a little bit longer and to know that you're a fair person. And Mel does a good job with this. Hey, what was your part in it? Like, if you did something wrong, you got to be accountable. You apologize to the teacher. It is what it is. It's not going to be, we're going to yell and scream and take away your stuff. No, this is how you are accountable for something you've done wrong. I have done it. We use other examples. Like I've screwed something up with a customer service relationship at one of the companies and I got to own it. I got to call the person and own it is what it is. So we try to teach accountability through the process, but I ask and get more information before I react.
So I'm going to almost summarize what you said. So one thing I heard you saying is you have to keep a low heart rate. So I think when I first get a call from a school, my heart immediately sinks. And actually, the majority of the time, it was like a positive thing. Because the middle school here does positive referrals. If a teacher says something positive about a kid, they send the referral to the principal's office and they actually call you with the kid anyway. So keeping a low heart rate is really important. So I think it's easy to either quickly get angry at the kid or quickly get angry at the school or whatever the case may be. Secondly, always remember that there are more sides to the story. Your kid, even if they're telling you the truth, they're still giving it to you from their perspective. Mm-hmm. If there's other kids involved, other people involved, there's going to be more sides to the story, which is the whole thing you said about asking questions and gathering information. Almost like you're an investigator. You're investigating the truth, not just what your kids saw as the truth. And thirdly, the accountability piece. So when I'm volunteering at the school and a kid is like slacking or something, I'll say to them, who's responsible for your learning? And almost immediately they say, you. And I'm like, nope. They're like, the teacher. Nope. My parents. Nope. You're in charge of your learning. So yes, all those people are there to support you and help you along, but ultimately you are in charge of it. So it also is the same way with behavior. Like you are in charge of your behavior, and we as your parents are here to help you shape it, help you figure it out. And if you've done something wrong, oftentimes those are the situations when you actually learn more because through difficulty or through a mistake, you learn something. So those are the three things that came to mind for me: keeping a low heart rate, investigating and trying to see all the different sides before making a decision, and making sure that you're teaching your kid that they are accountable for their action.
All right, next one. You first this time.
Okay.
Let's say what we were talking about earlier, kids get involved in superficial consumerism type behaviors. They want the Jordans. They want the pit vipers. They want the name brand jacket. How do you help navigate them through that situation?
I don't like this question. This is so hard. Okay, my first reaction is always, let's be thankful for what we have. And I feel like kids don't like to hear that necessarily because basically everything out in the world is telling that you need more, you want more, you need this thing, you need that thing. So I think bringing it back to gratitude, this is a huge reason why it's one of our core values, gratitude. It's a huge reason why we at dinner time every night share something we're thankful for. And then I also do that when I do the evening debrief with them, which is one of the steps of the path. We share what we're thankful for yet again, because I want to always have them in this practice. Oh, and the morning journal, they write down what they're thankful for. So it just continues this baseline of being thankful instead of just wanting something all the time. So I think that the culture of gratitude in a family can already, that is the foundation for being less materialistic.
And I agree with that. And I'll add just another spin on it, that typically when kids, including ours, get sucked up in this sort of thing, they don't have a lot going on. One of the best things you can do is not to, all right, what they want, the sneakers, and they work for it, they save them money to get the sneakers. Okay, they get the sneakers. That's life. There's going to be instances of that. My older brother was a big starter jacket guy. Had to get that 90s Boston Celtics pullover starter jacket. And so, like, those things happen. However, in the bigger picture, you help them set goals that align with where they want to go in life. Those superficial things are a distraction, and they are evidence of a distracted life that doesn't have a lot of purpose or goals. So if you want them to move past it and be like, all right, fine, they get that thing, but now where are we going? What goal are we setting? What are we doing week to week? And setting goals is part of the strong family path for that reason, that you want your kids to have purpose. And when they have purpose, they're not getting as distracted by these very superficial, easy, highly palatable items.
I think also that we need to take time to sit down and talk to them about how people get sucked in. So did you see a kid who was wearing those shoes or wearing those glasses and that's why you're thinking about it now? What primed you to think about it? And I think it's important as kids, when they're kids, to recognize how marketing works and what got you thinking about it. Because sometimes I think we can all relate. We want something and we might obsess about it. And then either you get it and you're just like, okay, whatever, I don't care anymore. It's almost like the wanting is more exciting than the having. And I think it's important for kids to start to learn that early. If they recognize, I want this thing, and then they get it and they're just not as excited about it anymore, I think it's important to then reflect back. Do you see how much energy and effort and time you put into wanting it? And now that it's here, it's not that important. And just a side note, we have to help the kids also be realistic. Like, why would you buy sneakers that cost $200 when you're just going to grow out of them in 6 months? So I think sometimes kids don't think about realistically how silly that is.
I'm going to finish on this one because it's a doozy.
Oh, none of the other ones were doozies.
Those are easy
Oh,
compared to
gosh.
this one. So you have kids that are inundated in a mass production, mass education system where they're taught obedience, and you stand in line to go somewhere. You raise your hand if you have to go pee. You sit there and you learn this thing that we're trying to teach you. Now, there's some uh, there's some exceptions to that rule. There's some creative classrooms. I think Henry's classroom does in particular a great job, and some states do better than other states, and some states do horrendous because they just make complete state mandates on the teachers. Hey, here's what you teach, and everyone gets the exact same. Mass production, you need to be obedient type situation. So how do you balance teaching your kids being respectful to those who are trying to pour into their education in that system while not losing their spark for being creative and thinking outside the box?
First comes to mind for me, well, like several thoughts in my mind. There's those certain things, like we've put ourselves in a position where we found this school that does provide, like Henry went ice fishing yesterday with his class. But I understand that that's not going to be practical for everybody. But if there is a chance, if you live in a state where you have school choice and you could choose a school that provides more of those creative or field trips or whatever, that might be something you want to look into.
Yeah, to your point, this isn't a private school, it's a public school.
Right.
Part of the reason why we upped and moved, because we weren't sure that our kids were going to get the education that fit them the best where they were. It was extended computer screen time, extended perhaps 2 years it was the threat of 2 years of not going back to school, just learn from computer screens. It wasn't going to be a fit for our kids. So we found a state and moved back to a different public school system that would afford them more opportunities. Not easy, and a lot of people say it must be nice, but it wasn't always nice. It wasn't easy, but it's
right.
At the end of the day, I'm sorry to cut you off. I know Mel said the kids are responsible for their education, but as parents, we're responsible for guiding that process. And if we're going to put them in a situation, we need to make sure it's a situation that they can succeed in. And even if you're putting them in a public school, you have no other option. We have our kids in public school right now. Mel homeschooled for a year. We went to private school. I have my master's in education, so we have a lot of perspective on this. We just have to keep fingers on the pulse of what's going on too.
And don't let must be nice hold you back. We love where we are now, but it's not perfect. I try to avoid the Springs because it's so busy and people drive like crazy. But you have to balance the good with the bad. Anyway, the other piece I was going to talk about was with balancing out school and home. It's really the strong family path, I think, is that it can be one of the answers. Because our kids are part of a high-functioning organization at home. We're not 100% relying that they learn everything at school. When they're home, we have structure here, especially with spending time together, being role models to them. But I also, and this is not something I grew up with, but I think it's important, and I say this to the kids a lot, school is just a piece of your experience. I think some families, might put so much emphasis on school that they forget that there's more to life than school. So I make sure I let my kids know that quite often. Yes, right now school is your responsibility and you're learning a lot, but that is not everything there is. I think that's an important, because I think different generations approach that differently, and I'm not saying it's good or bad. I just want my kids to see that school is just a piece of who you are. And I actually appreciate that the district we chose doesn't give a lot of homework. So when the kids come home, they can shift to whatever their interests are, whether it be sports, whether it be like Logan loves 3D printing. He spends time at this friend's office and he helps out with their computer chip business. It's awesome. But he probably couldn't do those things if all he focused on was homework and school. So I think there's we can give our kids a broader perspective. Because if you look back, let's say there's some drama going on in 6th grade, like when you're 25 years old, like that 6th grade drama will mean nothing. So there's just I hope I'm making a good point here. There's a bigger perspective than just school. There's more to life than school.
Yep, teach them more. I like that point. I will take a little bit of a different approach, because the debate about school is a challenging one. How do we provide a minimum education level for people that don't have a lot? And that is the school system. It's a minimum education level that serves people who tries to raise people up to a medium level of competency. And that's how they're designed. And it's okay to be a part of that system. And it's okay to care for others. And it's okay to be in the group with the kid who doesn't know as much. Maybe he doesn't have the same upbringing. You've got to show some empathy and learn it through the school system. I get that. I respect that. I think the kids should also be involved in either a sport, a club, or an activity that is more of a meritocracy, where you get results based on the effort you put in. And so you can learn both systems. You can be involved in both and understand empathy and still want to be competitive. And I learned that a ton through sports. You can do the same thing with, let's say, band. You want that first seat cello, you have to be better than the other person. You wanted the big role in the play. You want to have your stuff displayed at the art show. You want to be the starter on the sports team. These things are life lessons that a lot of kids miss out on because they only focus on the school system, which again it is what it is. It's a big beast to try to remedy while our kids are young. It's just not going to change in our lifetimes. It's a dinosaur and a beast. Expose them to other types of systems as well.
I love that you said that because the other thing that occurred to me was like one of our sons is a super competitive. So it can be a sports competitive. If it's grades, he's competitive. If he sees someone else has a better project, he suddenly wants to do better on his to get a better grade. And I think that's a little, like you have to, first of all, you have to know each of your kids and their personalities and what's going to work for them. Because I see that being good and bad for him. Life is not about getting good grades. How do I want you to do well in school? Of course. Can it afford you opportunities later on? Of course. But I think if you only focus on good grades, you're missing out on the true lessons. If he had to design this tiny home on the computer, and it was so cool. And he wasn't really into it. And then all of a sudden he saw other people doing extra work on it at home and making them so cool. So he suddenly got really into it. But I wanted to make sure he was into it because he was interested and excited, not just because he wanted to beat this other kid and get a better grade. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Like I want him to take from it like, wow, I have this passion for architecture and design. Not like I just want to beat this other kid because I want to be smarter. You know what I mean? So I think it's like we see this competitive nature, which can be really great or detrimental. And we try to, at home, like hone in on it.
And that makes sense. And I think it's important that they interact with people that are high performers, medium performers, low performers, and that is situational, where if it's in the classroom, someone might be a low performer. On this instance, in a band, they might be a high performer or sports team or whatever. And so we want our kids to grow up to be leaders in their life. And to be a leader, you need to understand different personality types, different performance levels, understand that some people are good at some things, or they could be bad at something. Doesn't mean they're bad at everything. It teaches perspective, and I think honing in on that is helpful in this conversation. I've had enough. Last words, Mel.
That was an exciting one. What it really comes back to is you have to spend time, going back to my quote earlier about the things that you can't ignore, the things that money can't buy. Really take the time to get to know your individual kids. It can be draining, but I think the more we do that, the more we set them up for success, and that's really what I want to do.
Yeah, this podcast gave me some energy at times to get back to the working out. I was thinking about resting a little, but not going to happen. Visit strongfamilyproject.com. You get the 7 steps of the path. We referenced a lot of them today, and visit season 1, specifically the episodes on role modeling on your favorite podcast player or at strongfamilyproject.com. You can hit that search bar, search areas that we need to role model for our kids, and those episodes really relate to what we talked about today. Talk to you on the next episode.